Jody is still holding the shotgun when Herschel tells him to put it down. He says he is handing it over but keeps moving. Carl fires before the gun reaches the ground. Herschel looks horrified. Carl barely reacts. 5 seasons later, that same kid is lying in a church with a walker bite, trying to convince Rick that even Negan should be allowed to live. I've always had trouble putting those scenes together. The easy explanation is that one of them doesn't belong. Either Jody is where the world breaks Carl, or Season 8 rewrites him because the story needs Rick to spare Negan. There is truth in both complaints, but neither explains him completely. So I went back through his story looking for the point where he stops being a child. The deer, Lori, Jody, and the bullet that takes his eye are the obvious choices. But I kept returning to after, when Carl points a gun at Rick and cannot pull the trigger. That scene tells us more about him than most of the people he shoots. It also makes his choice with Siddiq feel less random, even if the show rushes the road between them. Carl's childhood doesn't end all at once. It gets taken in pieces, usually by adults who call him brave for carrying them. We never see Carl before the outbreak. By the time we meet him, he already thinks his father is dead. He lives with Lori in a quarry camp, and Shane has taken on the job of protecting them. Whatever Carl's normal life looked like, the series begins after it is gone. Then Rick walks into camp. Carl runs straight into his father's arms. I love that reaction because it gives us a version of him we almost never see again. For a little while, he can believe adults still know how to fix things. Rick survived a gunshot, a coma, and an abandoned hospital, then found his family. If his dad can come home from that, perhaps the world isn't completely lost. Season 2 wears that belief down slowly. Carl approaches a deer in the woods because for once, he sees something beautiful instead of something trying to eat him. He steps closer. A rifle goes off, and the same bullet passes through the deer and into him. What stays with me is how ordinary Carl's mistake is. A child stops to look at an animal. In the old world, nobody would remember it. Here, it nearly kills him. Carl survives and starts asking for a gun. Rick and Lori still see the weapon as a line between childhood and everything outside it. Carl crossed that line without touching one. Being unarmed did not protect him. It only left his life in someone else's hands. When they agree, Shane teaches him to shoot. Carl listens and copies his stance. He isn't playing sheriff. He wants to be included when serious decisions are made. The gun tells him his fear counts now, and that being useful during violence is the fastest way to be treated like an adult. Then Sophia comes out of the barn. Carl knew her as another kid at the camp. The adults spent days promising they would find her, and technically they do. She walks through the barn doors as a walker while everyone stands there, unable to move. Rick is the one who steps forward and shoots her. Carl watches his father do something awful because no one else can. I don't think he reads that scene as cruelty. He reads it as responsibility. Sometimes the person who loves you is also the person expected to end what is left of you. The lesson comes back when Shane dies. Carl finds Rick kneeling in the field and raises his pistol. For a moment, Rick thinks his own son is aiming at him. Then Shane stands up behind him. Carl sees it first and fires. By the time they reach the prison, shooting someone he knew no longer feels impossible. Then Lori asks him to do something much worse. Maggie performs an emergency delivery, and Lori understands that she will not survive it. She tells Carl to do what is right, even when it is hard. Judith is born. Maggie carries the baby out, while Carl stays behind to make sure his mother does not turn. The shot happens off screen. We hear it, then watch Carl leave the room. No walker is rushing him, and nobody is beside him to make the choice. He completes the task and comes back with almost nothing on his face. I don't read that expression as Carl feeling nothing. It looks like a method for surviving something he cannot process yet. Find the job, finish it, keep moving until there is time to feel it later. Jody is what happens when Carl starts using that method before anyone has asked him to. The Woodbury teenager still has his shotgun. Herschel tells him to drop it. Jody says he is surrendering, but moves closer instead of putting the weapon down. Carl has a good reason to be nervous. Herschel has a good reason to think the boy is scared. The scene allows both readings. Carl decides they cannot afford to wait and find out. Later, he explains his reasoning to Rick. Andrew was left alive and came back to the prison, where Lori and T-Dog died during the attack. Rick met with the governor and let him leave. The governor later killed Merle. Carl has noticed a pattern. Every enemy the adults fail to finish seems to return attached to another funeral. When Carl says,
"I did what I had to do,"
he believes it. In his head, Jody is no longer one frightened teenager. He is Andrew, the governor, and every consequence Rick might be too decent to prevent. Carl kills the possibility before it can become real. Herschel calls it cold-blooded. Carl calls it necessary. The episode never settles the argument, and I don't think it should. Jody is not following the order properly, but Carl shoots before anyone knows what he intended. He would rather kill the wrong person than lose someone because he hesitated. Next, Rick returns with a bus full of Woodbury survivors and welcomes them into the prison. Carl watches, then walks away. Rick sees frightened people who need somewhere to live. Carl sees strangers he has not had time to judge. He has begun to confuse suspicion with maturity. Killing is only part of the problem. The harder habit to break is the belief that trusting anyone is childish. Rick seems to understand what Carl's behavior says about him as a father. When Season 4 begins, he has stepped away from leadership and started farming. He wants Carl to see him grow food, care for animals, and build a life that is not organized around the next person they may have to kill. When the prison fence starts to fail, pigs and vegetables cannot stop the walkers. Rick takes out his gun and gives Carl's weapon back. The peaceful lesson is sincere. The emergency teaches the opposite one. At this point, Jody looks like the end of Carl's arc. A frightened boy has become someone who shoots first because experience keeps rewarding him for it. Then, after, gives him exactly what he says he wants. A life without adults making decisions for him. The prison is gone. Carl believes Judith is dead, and Rick is so badly injured that he can barely speak. Carl blames him for all of it. He tells his unconscious father that he does not need him anymore, walks outside and spends the day trying to prove it. Carl draws walkers away from the house, nearly gets overwhelmed, scavenges alone, and eats an enormous can of chocolate pudding on a roof. The pudding is funny, but it is also unmistakably childish. Nobody tells him to share or when to come down. For a few minutes, surviving alone feels like freedom. Then he returns to the house and hears Rick making the same sounds as a walker. Carl raises his gun. He shot Shane after he turned. He stopped Lori from turning. He killed Jody because the boy might become a threat. If Carl is really the person he claims to be, this should be easy. He cannot do it. Carl's hand begins to fail him.
Carl.
Rick wakes up human, and Carl admits he is scared. The prison is still gone. Judith is still missing. Nothing outside that room has improved. What changes is Carl's story about himself. He does need people. Pretending otherwise only makes fear easier to hide. That scene changed the way I see the rest of his arc. Carl is not steadily losing emotion. He is learning how to perform toughness whenever he feels powerless. Usually the performance works. With Rick on the floor, it doesn't. Michonne understands that side of him. In Clear, she helps Carl retrieve a photograph of Lori for Judith, then returns with that ridiculous rainbow cat sculpture to make him smile. She trusts him in danger without asking him to pretend he stopped being a kid. Around Michonne, Carl can be afraid, laugh, and still help keep them alive. Competence and childhood can exist in the same person. Alexandria puts that balance under pressure in a different way. Carl gets a bedroom, comic books, video games, and teenagers his own age. Instead of relaxing, he tells Rick that the people behind the walls are weak. Safety feels suspicious because every safe place he has known eventually collapsed. Yet Carl follows Enid outside. They run through the woods, hide inside a hollow tree, and almost kiss. Later, Carl says they go out because they are kids. Enid says they are not kids anymore. Neither is completely wrong. They flirt like teenagers while carrying rifles. Losing his eye does not suddenly turn Carl into someone else. Ron aims at Rick. Michonne drives her sword through Ron. The gun discharges, and the bullet hits Carl in the face. When Carl wakes, Rick describes the world they could rebuild. Carl squeezes his hand. The scar makes Carl look older. His next major decision shows that the anger is still there. He hides inside a savior truck, rides into the Sanctuary, and opens fire. He kills 2 men while trying to reach Negan. There is no uncertainty this time. Carl knows exactly what Negan has done, and he is willing to die if it gives him a chance to kill him. Negan quickly takes control. He forces Carl to remove the bandage,
Sing me a song.
Negan sometimes seems impressed by him, which explains the strange affection some viewers see. But the power never becomes equal. Negan humiliates Carl and later comes within seconds of killing him. Carl may interest him. Carl is never safe with him. Then Season 8 asks us to accept a much more peaceful Carl almost at once. This is the part I still don't buy. I can believe Carl eventually gets there. I don't believe the show earns it that quickly. Chandler Riggs was 10 when he was cast, and by his final episode he had spent roughly half his life on The Walking Dead. After his exit, Riggs described Carl as a humanitarian figure who could move Rick toward mercy. That explains Carl's function in the ending. It also explains why part of the change feels written for Rick rather than developed through Carl. The comic lets Carl live long enough to look back on Rick's world as history. The television series was free to choose another ending. It still needed a few more steps between the boy who attacks the Sanctuary and the boy asking Rick to save the Saviors. I don't completely believe the transition. I do believe the choice at the center of it, and that starts with Siddiq. Rick scares Siddiq away from a gas station. Carl leaves food, apologizes, and later goes looking for him. When they meet again, Carl asks the same 3 questions Rick once used to judge strangers. He listens to Siddiq talk about his mother, then offers to bring him home. On the way, they find walkers feeding on a deer. Siddiq says his mother believed that killing walkers released their souls. Carl could simply keep walking. Instead, he helps Siddiq honor a belief that means nothing to him personally. During the fight, a walker bites him in the side. That choice brings us back to the gun in After. Carl could not shoot Rick because he loved him. Siddiq is harder. Carl accepts danger for someone he just met, with no guarantee he is useful or trustworthy. Years earlier, Carl killed Jody rather than tolerate that uncertainty. Now he decides another person is worth the chance. I wish Season 8 had spent more time letting us watch that change happen, but this decision at least belongs to Carl. Nobody orders him to find Siddiq. Rick actually gives him a reason not to. The bite does not make Carl harmless. When the Saviors attack, he gets everyone into the sewers and keeps Negan talking long enough for them to escape. Then he turns to what he wants to leave behind. Letters, photographs, painted handprints, time with Judith. He gives Judith the sheriff hat. Rick wore it when the uniform still came with laws behind it. Carl wore it while its meaning had to be invented from one decision to the next. Judith receives a warning as much as a gift. Honor Rick, but show him the way when he loses it.
It can be like that again.
And remembers how easy killing him felt. Then he points to what Rick did afterward. Rick stopped running the prison like a battlefield and brought the surviving people from Woodbury inside. For a while, former enemies lived behind the same fence. Carl isn't asking Rick to pretend Negan did nothing. He is asking him to stop the war before Judith grows up believing that war is the only thing adults know how to pass down. In the future, Carl imagines, Alexandria has been rebuilt, Rick has grown old, and Negan is working in the garden. It is almost absurdly hopeful. Coming from Carl, that is why it matters. The story later connects that hope to Siddiq. During the final battle, Rick cuts Negan's throat and lets him fall beneath the tree. Then he changes his mind, turns to Siddiq and tells him to save Negan. And the doctor Rick turns to is Siddiq, the stranger he chased away and the man Carl went back for. Carl never knew this would happen, and he did not save Siddiq as part of a plan. The connection works because it is accidental. Carl gives one stranger a future, and that stranger is there when Rick gives his enemy one too. Carl's death does not prove mercy is safe. Helping Siddiq is why he gets bitten. Carl finally understands that safety cannot be the only thing a life is built around. Without the risk of trusting someone new, the future is the same frightened group fighting the same enemies until nobody is left. So I don't think Carl loses his innocence only once. Lori teaches him to bury grief inside a job. Jody shows what happens when he starts inventing those jobs for himself. After reveals that the hard version of Carl is partly an act. Siddiq is where he finally chooses what kind of adult he wants to become. He does not return to the boy from the quarry. That boy believed Rick could fix the world. Carl dies knowing his father cannot do that. He asks him to keep trying anyway. Which scene does it for you? Lori, Jody, the gun Carl lowers in After, or Siddiq? Where do you think Carl actually stops being a child?